Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Brian Horsborough with the Bureau of Reclamation. We're going to get started in about a minute here. Okay, well, welcome, everybody. Good morning. I hope you're having a great week. Let's go ahead and get started with this morning's event. We may have a few people join as we move through, but that's okay. Christine, could you please move to the next slide? Okay, great. Thanks, Christine. Welcome to the Bureau of Reclamation's Upper Payette Division virtual outreach event. Again, my name is Brian Horsborough. I am the Snake River Area Office Deputy Area Manager and also the Middle Snake Field Office Manager, and I will be moderating today's event. Sincerely appreciate you joining us this morning to learn more about some of Reclamation's important activities in the Upper Payette Basin. We have hosted events like this in the past, although they have normally been in person. We do find them to be a very effective way to communicate with a broad audience on several topics at once. So that's exactly what we hope to achieve today. Hopefully you find this information useful, and we are hoping to return to the in-person events in the future, perhaps as early as this fall if we're lucky. I'd like to begin by going over some of the event logistics. First, I do need to inform folks that this event is being recorded. Second, in order to effectively manage through the Teams environment, we've muted everybody's line and you won't be able to communicate with us verbally. However, as we move through the presentations, I do encourage you to put any questions you might have for our speakers in the event Q&A section. And we'll answer them as we have time. In the event that we're unable to answer questions in today's time, we also plan to prepare a matrix with all of the questions and answers. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like a copy of those Q&As. Also want to mention, as you may have just experienced, there will be a slight delay between the slides as they load. That appears to just be an artifact of the Teams Live platform. So any pauses by our presenters in between slides are just to allow those slides to catch up. And so we'll try to keep an eye on that as we move forward to make sure there's no major gaps. So in our time together today, we're going to be covering 5 of Reclamation's publicly facing programs in the Upper Payette River Basin. The programs that we'll discuss include ESA or Endangered Species Act compliance and fisheries. Second will be land use activities. Third will be water quality. Fourth, water operations. And then finally, 5 will be emergency action planning. And on that last topic of emergency action planning, I just want to make it clear to folks that Reclamation is not aware of any natural or man-induced activities that present a threat to reclamation structures in the Payette River Basin. But of course, it is very important for us to have planning activities in place to address such instances. And so I just want to talk to you about some of those today and describe them to you, just to give you that general awareness of the emergency action planning work that we do. So I'll introduce the speakers in more detail as we start their presentations, but I do want to say that we have a lot of knowledge in the virtual room today. Each one of our speakers is an expert in their field, They're well respected across reclamation, and I personally am very proud to have them with us today. So I think you're in for a real treat. Christine, could you go to the next slide, please? Great. So here we have a list of the speaker's contact information, and I'll go ahead and leave this up for a moment as I describe the geographic boundary for today's event. And then, you know, you might want to write these down in the event that you want to contact any of our speakers or myself or Christine after the fact. So I suspect many of you are familiar with the Bureau of Reclamation Boise project's geographic boundary. But for those that might not be, let me just take a few moments to describe the geographic boundaries for those that aren't familiar. So the Reclamation Boise project is separated into two divisions. There's the Arrow Rock Division and the Payette Division. The Arrow Rock Division, which is down here in the Boise watershed, consists of reclamation facilities and lands in the Boise River watershed. And the Payette Division, so north of Boise, of course, consists of reclamation facilities and lands in the Payette River watershed. So that's the focus of our conversation today, is the Payette Division, and that will include Cascade Dam, Deadwood Dam, and Black Canyon Diversion Dam. Although I will say that today's presentations are going to focus on activities above Black Canyon Reservoir, and we'll focus on the upper Payette Division. Let's see, so before we move into the presentations, I did want to take a few moments and discuss just a couple of emerging topics that we have in the upper Payette Division. The first one is really exciting. I just wanted to announce that my office recently received some internal funding to perform a 2-year study to evaluate some potential operation scenarios that might benefit water quality in Cascade Reservoir. And so essentially what that study will do is it will utilize an existing operations model, a water operations model that we have, to evaluate how different operational scenarios, given our constraints, of course, might affect lake levels in Cascade Reservoir. And then we would develop a new water quality model for the reservoir to evaluate how those differing lake levels might affect water quality conditions, including, of course, those that could lead to algal blooms, which I know is of great interest to many folks in the upper basin. A couple things to note on that study is number one, it's just that, it's a study. We will not make any operational changes, so that's very important. And the second one is the development of the modeling scenarios for the water operations modeling scenarios will be a public process. As I mentioned, there are some constraints on the system, such as irrigation delivery requirements, flood control requirements. So the process of developing our modeling scenarios will be performed in a very transparent manner through the public participation process, so that everyone that has a stake in the game has a voice. And so more to come on that public process. We just found out that we received funding a couple of weeks ago, so we're trying to get our internal processes in place to get that study started. So stay tuned on that. I also want to announce that we are in the process of hiring behind Jim Zokin, who some of you may know, who recently departed as the Cascade Field Station Manager. That position has been vacant for about 6 months now, and Brian Brown from our Boise office, who you'll hear from later, has done a fantastic job filling in. Really appreciate his time, but we do need to get that position filled. Based on our current pace, we're hoping to have a new person on board sometime in early fall of this year. So with those remarks behind us, let's go ahead and move into the presentations. Our first speaker is Dmitry Virgar. Dmitry is the ESA compliance lead for the Snake River Area Office, and he will discuss Endangered Species Act compliance and fisheries issues in the basin. Dmitry, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you for the introduction, Brian. And good morning, everyone. Today, I'd like to provide a little context for Reclamation's Endangered Species Act compliance in the Upper Payette watershed. Don't worry though, I'm not going to go into a long history of the Endangered Species Act, but I would like to point out a few things that relate to the rest of the slides. First, the Endangered Species Act of 1973 is the primary law in the United States for protecting species from extinction. Two, the Act identifies procedures for federal interagency cooperation to conserve protected species. And three, by following the requirements, Reclamation has legal coverage for impacts to protected species that may occur when operating each reservoir. Okay, no more school lessons there. Next slide, please. Oops, can you back up one slide? I think I got a little ahead of myself. There, yeah, there we go, thank you. The Endangered Species Act compliance is a legal obligation, and meeting the requirements requires the coordinated management of water across the Payette and Boise basins, along with the rest of the Snake River watershed upstream of Brownlee. In the state of Idaho, there are 16 different federally protected species, and the distribution of 4 of them overlap with the Upper Payette Basin. Additionally, water from the Payette Basin has direct management implications for an additional 16 species of salmon, steelhead, and other species that occur downstream. Reclamation's requirements are determined through consultations with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and with the National Marine Fisheries Service. There are 2 primary consultations that involve the Payette Basin. These documents include both seasonal and annual management requirements. The requirements include details like minimum pool elevation and seasonal flow targets. And Cascade and Deadwood reservoirs are managed together to meet the Payette requirements. So change in flow at one project typically means an adjustment at the other. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Consultation provides protections for the local species that include fish, mammals, and plants. The National Marine Fisheries Service Consultation provides coverage for the downstream salmon and steelhead, primarily by providing salmon augmentation flows, which are also referred to as flow augmentation. Ryan will explain the nuances of this commitment in more detail during the water operations presentation. Next slide, please. Cascade Reservoir is part of the Boise project, which consists of 10 facilities. The 4 largest are pictured here, starting in the upper right and moving clockwise. We see Anderson Ranch, Arrow Rock, Deadwood, and Cascade reservoirs. I wanted to point these out because meeting ESA requirements can involve balancing the management of each of these facilities with the others. Next slide, please. To better understand the larger role of Cascade within the watershed, it's important to picture the Upper Payette being part of a very large network that involves components of balancing water management all the way down the Columbia River. Many of you may be familiar with Reclamation's Hydromet site, which is a great way to get up-to-date water levels and flow for each of the monitoring sites that Reclamation controls. At a local scale for the Boise and Payette watersheds, the figure on the left has a circle around Cascade Reservoir, and you can also see how many monitoring locations that there are there. Then stepping back for perspective of the size and the balance of the Pacific Northwest region, of which Cascade Reservoir is part of, The diagram on the right shows how the Boise and Payette systems are one part of the web of water management. Next slide, please. So zooming back into the local management web, let's take a quick look at the partnerships for management around Cascade Reservoir, which includes a range of agencies and user groups. The primary ones are listed on the slide. And Brian will provide more details on land management in the next presentation. Generally speaking, though, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game manages the fish and wildlife resources. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and National Marine Fisheries Service oversees the protection of listed species. The Boise National Forest manages the adjacent lands, and Reclamation balances the water needs for the range of water users, of which Endangered Species Act requirements are part of. Each agency has different responsibilities, which on one hand allows Reclamation to focus on what we are authorized to do, but on the other hand, it also means that identifying flexibilities can be challenging. Next slide, please. Endangered Species Act compliance is important, but it's just one aspect of Reclamation's management responsibilities at Cascade Reservoir. My overview provided a very, very brief picture of Reclamation's Endangered Species Act compliance. If you have other questions on what I've presented, please contact me at the email address on the screen. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you all today. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Brian. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dimitri. Just looking through the Q&A, and I don't see any questions thus far. So if after thinking about Dimitri's remarks, you have something, go ahead and put them into the Q&A and we can go back to those. So with that, let's move on to our next speaker. Our second speaker is Brian Brown. Brian is a realty specialist in our Middle Snake field office, and he'll discuss land use activities in the Upper Payette Division. Take it away, Brian.
As I mentioned a second ago, that most of the lands around Deadwood Reservoir are managed by the U.S. Forest Service, so the rest of this presentation will be focused on Lake Cascade. Bureau Reclamation's management actions around Lake Cascade are implemented to protect reservoir operations while considering natural resources and public needs. Management actions are in accordance with our regulations, which include rules for public conduct cited in Section 43 of Code of Federal Regulations, Part 423, and the use of reclamation land, facilities, and water bodies cited in 43 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 429, in addition to guidance in the 2002 Cascade Resource Management Plan. The 2002 Cascade Resource Management Plan further defines goals and objectives of land management by placing the land into 5 categories. They include recreation, rural residential, conservation open space, wildlife management areas, and operation and maintenance areas. The details of these categories will be explained a little further here in the coming slides. A common theme in Reclamation's management is partnerships and coordination. Due to the complexity of land management activities in the area, Reclamation relies on coordination with recreation managing partners, adjacent private landowners, and other governmental agencies as shown. Next slide, please. The first category of land in the resource management plan is recreation. One of the greatest public needs around Lake Cascade is recreation availability, and there's a variety of opportunities available on reclamation land and waters. Developed recreation sites on reclamation land are operated by managing partners or through lease agreements. Next slide, please. Why do we use recreation managing partners? Well, reclamation projects such as Cascade Dam and Reservoir are authorized by congressional legislation. This legislation defines the scope of the projects and oftentimes does not include the authority to directly manage developed recreation facilities. Public Law 8972 gives authority to utilize non-federal partners to manage recreation facilities on reclamation lands. Next slide, please. Some examples of managing partner sites include the Idaho State Parks, which operate a multitude of campgrounds, boat ramps, and other day use areas as part of their Lake Cascade State Parks unit. The City of Donnelly, which operates the Donnelly Park and Boat Launch, and the City of Cascade, which operates the Cascade Golf Course. Other examples of recreation sites include lease agreements to nonprofit organizations, such as the Southern Idaho Senior Citizens Recreation Association, which operates the Siskra Campground and the Cascade Lake 4-H Camp. Next slide, please. The next category of land in the resource management plan is rural residential. Lands categorized as rural residential are small parcels located between the reservoir and private property, which are acquired and retained to mitigate impacts from reservoir operations. Next slide. In rural residential lands, use authorizations are issued to address management actions. This can include boat dock permits, retaining wall or erosion control structure permits, sand removal permits, and hazard trees. In accordance with the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 429, reclamation is not allowed to issue new permits that have private, exclusive, recreational, or residential uses. Next slide, please. The next category of land in the resource management plan is wildlife management areas. Lands designated as wildlife management areas are developed to protect, conserve, and enhance wildlife habitat, maintain stable soils, and native vegetation. Wildlife management areas are open to the public for passive, low-intensity activities such as hiking, picnicking, swimming, fishing, or nature studies. In these areas, prohibited activities include, but are not limited to, overnight camping, off-road vehicle use, open fires, or wood cutting or vegetation removal. The wildlife management areas are also subject to seasonal closures and access restrictions as posted on the signs. Next slide, please. The fourth category of land in the resource management plan is conservation open space. Lands designated as conservation open space are retained by reclamation to provide a buffer between developed recreation areas, private residences, and the wildlife management areas. Conservation open space lands are also open to public use. In these areas, prohibited activities include, but are not limited to, overnight camping, off-highway vehicle use, open fires, wood cutting, and vegetation removal. Next slide, please. The final category highlighted in the resource management plan is operation and maintenance areas. The operation and maintenance lands are managed for the purpose of operating and maintaining the dam and the reservoir. It includes 19 acres of land and facilities, including the dam, roadway, administrative offices, and the maintenance building and yard. Next slide, please. A few of the land resources projects that we'd like to highlight for the year 2021 include the Duck Creek Wildlife Management Area permanent fence construction, which is currently underway, and the proposed Willow Creek Wildlife Management Area fence construction for fall of 2021 and spring of 2022. We're also actively posting boundaries, restriction signs around wildlife management areas and conservation open space to better educate the public. And we are consistently working on rail fence maintenance projects. Forest fuels reduction project, which has been coordinated with the Boise National Forest and the Idaho Conservation Corps, is active this summer at the Lake Fork Creek Wildlife Management Area and a portion of the North Fork Wildlife Management Area. These projects will provide benefits to natural resources around the reservoir, and some other benefits will be explained in greater detail in the water quality presentation. Next slide, please. And that'll conclude the land management section. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you could hear me okay, and I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Great, thanks, Brian. Interestingly enough, the audio got better and better the further along you went. So maybe you were just leaning close to your computer, but it's much appreciated. Looking at the Q&A chat, it looks like we don't have any questions thus far, Brian, so appreciate your time. Our third speaker today is Dr. Rich Jackson. Dr. Jackson is a natural resource specialist for the Snake River Area Office, and he'll discuss water quality issues in the basin. I'll turn it over to you, Rich.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Let's primarily look at what we're doing with water quality improvement at Cascade Reservoir. Next slide, please. So a little background on the reservoir. The reservoir is shallow with an average depth of around 26.5 feet. And to add some more problems, not only is it shallow, but it has a high volume, or it has a high surface area to volume ratio, which lends it to be more prone to heating up, which is rarely good for a cold water recreational area. During the first 30 years of operation, the average annual drawdown for this reservoir was around 16 feet. However, in the 80s, with an administrative decision, mostly with Bureau of Reclamation and Idaho Fish and Game, an administrative decision was made to maintain the reservoir at around 300,000 acre foot. And that brings the annual drawdown to be reduced only to 12 feet as compared to the previous 16 feet. This helped maintain a higher water level throughout the season, and with more water, typically better water quality. Next slide, please. So let's get into specifically Bureau of Reclamation's water quality monitoring program. As seen on this slide to the left, we've sampled various areas of the reservoir at one time or another. However, we have a systematic and periodic sampling protocol for all of our reservoirs that we manage, but specifically for Cascade, we monitor the reservoir every 3 years, and 3 locations on the Payette River above and below Cascade Reservoir. These samples are collected and analyzed by our water quality lab here in Boise, and all of this information, the water quality information, is publicly available at www.waterqualitydata.us. Next slide, please. So let's get into some specifics on what Reclamation is doing to improve water quality. Specifically, we've done a fair amount of outreach, starting in, well, not starting, but we've done outreach in 2018, 2019, and of course today, with open houses in Cascade, to where we have Idaho Fish and Game, Idaho Parks and Recreation, and Reclamation specialists and management working together and explaining how we manage a reservoir and clearing up any misconceptions or questions that the public or other agency folks have. We also participate in the Valley Soil, Water, and Conservation District meetings. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest things that we do is to improve water quality is erosion control, and more appropriately, erosion prevention. We encourage special use retaining wall and erosion permits. The Lands and Realty group does around 5 to 15 a year, and they do pretty good. These prevent, what we're really looking for is to prevent excessive erosion into the reservoir and to prevent this erosion from increasing TDS, total dissolved solids, the sediment load, and the nutrients that could be brought through with the soil particles. Reclamation and Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation have completed retaining wall and erosion projects near the recreation sites. This too prevents erosion. And then another thing we do is signage, which doesn't sound like much, but trying to prevent erosional scars due to, say, unauthorized OHV use and stuff does incrementally help the water quality. Next slide, please. So some water quality land improvement actions that we do specifically is we try to manage forest health. And I don't want to say try to manage forest health. We manage forest health to try to improve the vegetation and the soil as to improve and overall reduce erosion. So some of the key factors on managing and improving forest health, we issue special use hazard tree removal permits. These are usually near private structures, near trails and access areas. We do fire suppression and fuels reduction. Specifically, we contracted Boise National Forest. And we also have weed treatments that we do on our properties. We contract out weed treatments mostly on wildlife management areas. We typically survey around 1,000 acres and treat up to 100 acres a year. And again, please remember, all this is healthy forest will have healthy soils and slow any type of erosional processes and overland transport of contaminants into the reservoir. Next slide, please. And the last thing I want to talk to you about on our land improvement actions that improve water quality are our fencing projects. We have a mix of electric, barbless pole fencing around much of the reclamation boundary. These fencing projects, which Brian in the previous presentation described, these prevent livestock from directly impacting the reservoir. No amount of livestock in a reservoir is good for water quality. So this is really helpful on improving water quality. Next slide, please. Actions that Reclamation will continue to do is we're going to continue to work collaboratively with the Valley Soil and Watershed District, Idaho Fish and Game, Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and local interest groups and private citizens to work on projects for improving on what we can on water quality at Cascade Reservoir, and participate in the watershed advisory groups and technical advisory groups on water quality with DEQ to hopefully we'll work together and find solutions together. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or concerns, please give me an email. Brian, back to you.
Great, thanks, Rich. Nice job as always. Looks like we got a couple questions here for you. think you can maybe see those in the chat, but I'll go ahead and reiterate. First question is, with toxic algae outbreaks occurring on a regular basis, does it make sense to increase testing from 3 years to a yearly basis? This could help identify point sources that contribute to degraded water quality and toxic algae outbreaks.
That is a very good question. Yes, with the onslaught of toxic algal blooms, we do it is important to do more testing. However, we're also aiding DEQ in their testing of the Cascade Reservoir. So kind of indirectly, we are testing this year for toxic algal blooms and things that are associated with it. So though we are not doing it directly, we are aiding Department of Environmental Quality in doing so.
All right, a couple more here, Rich. A follow-on question from the same asker regarding weed treatments. Do the herbicides contain phosphates or nitrates that could find their way into the lake and contribute to the toxic algae outbreaks? If so, are there better or more appropriate herbicides that the BOR can use?
Yes, that too is a good question. All of our contracted weed treatments, herbicides that Reclamation contracts out to use have been fully vetted and can be used around riparian areas, and that's per federal guidance. So they have been vetted through a very stringent review that, number one, they have to target the species that you're using them on, and number two, they have very low matter that would contribute to these eutrophication of the reservoir.
Thanks, Rich. Looks like one final question. Often cattle are seen grazing in the shoreline on BOR lands and drinking from the lake. This is not in compliance with IDEQ implementation BMPs. Who does the public call to report abuse and get corrective actions?
Again, another good question. But I will request that would be more of a lands and realty. If Brian Brown, are you available to be able to answer that one specifically? Because I think this goes into more ag lease areas.
Yeah, would you like me to reiterate the question, Brian? Yeah, we can hear you. Would you like me to reiterate the question?
Brian, my suggestion is to have this asker please contact me directly, and any members of the public as well that have cattle grazing questions can contact me directly. There are some complex grazing situations on reclamation land that have to do with agricultural easement rights. So sometimes the cattle adjacent to the reservoir do have the permission to be there. But every area is different, so please contact me for more information.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, let me just double check here to make sure we don't have any additional questions. Okay, it looks like we're good, Rich. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. So our fourth speaker today is Ryan Hedrick. Ryan is a hydrologist with the Snake River Area Office, and he will discuss the dynamics of water operations in the Payette River Basin. I'll turn it over to you, Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ryan Hedrick. I'm going to try to walk you through what a typical year is like for water operations and how we operate the system. Next slide, please. So first, I wanted to lay out who has the space in Cascade. We have 646,000 acre-feet of water that is in Cascade. 310,000 acre feet is contracted by irrigators and other users. We have a conservation pool of 250,000 acre feet. There's 50,000 more on top of that, which is inactive space. So we have a pool of about 300,000 acre feet of conservation space that can't be used. And as Rich said, this was brought about in the 90s to help with water quality. We have about 69,600 acre feet of flow augmentation water that is used to run through the system and down through the system to help provide flows for salmon and steelhead. And then we have 16,000 of committed space, which is sitting aside for people that would like to maybe use it for future irrigation uses. Next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of walk through the flow augmentation. Some may not realize that there is an amount of water that we have to release, that we're required to release due to the 2008 biological opinion. That value varies between 427,000 and 487,000 acre feet of water. That water is usually determined, or it is determined based on the water year. So if we have a good water year, we're required to release 487,000. And this amount of water isn't, it is both on the middle snake office and the upper snake office, which is in Hayburn and is some of the larger reservoirs like Palisades. So it's a combined amount that we release from our area. In 2021, the Payette Basin released 118,000 acre feet of water. 81,000 was from the Deadwood and Cascade space that we have set aside. And then the irrigators, if they have extra water, they rent the remaining amount to us. And this year they rented 36,000. The nice thing with this flow augmentation is that in other basins, we're required to get it out as soon as possible. So in the Boise Basin, we have to release the water as soon as we possibly can. Due to the issues at Cascade, they allowed us to extend that release into August 31st. So we got a great benefit through this opinion because of the water quality issues. So instead of releasing it all at once, we are able to extend it throughout August 31st, and it's a slow release, and that helps keep the level up higher at Cascade. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to show you these slides on how we determine where we're at on the reservoirs, what we do. So beginning January 1, usually we start looking at everything. We start looking at our snowpack, and we watch this throughout the year, and we create these forecasts. And the forecasts look at how much snow we have currently, you know, and then that kind of starts to direct us on where we need to go with the reservoir. Do we need to start emptying the reservoir? Do we need to just not do anything? And I just wanted to point this out that we're constantly looking at that throughout the season. Next slide. We also look at the precipitation and the snow water equivalent. This year, it was a very poor year. We held the reservoir as long as we possibly could and at a minimum flow. And so that's where we're at on that position. Next slide, please. So I tried to outline a typical operation if in the lower right there, there's a minimum flow of 200 CFS. It's an Idaho power right that we're required to meet. So throughout the year, we're releasing 200 CFS. And then if you look at the yellow line, you can see these are the releases that we have done. And we start to do flood operations early in the season, and that comes about from watching where we're at with the snowpack. And we have to, or we typically follow that little red dash line. That's our kind of our rule curve. So we try to keep on that curve. So at times we'll release higher amounts to create a hole or to draft some water. And then as the year goes on, we will adjust throughout the spring. And then finally at the end, you can see there's a flow augmentation and irrigation demand. That typically occurs in late June, July, and that's where we typically slowly release the flow augmentation water and also meet irrigation demand during that time. If you look at the top, it says missed physical fill. So if we are in flood control and we start releasing water because we know we will fill the system, that water is accounted for in flow augmentation water. So that big chunk of water that we have to release out, all that water that we don't fill the system is accounted for into flow augmentation. So once that's reduced from the total number we're required to release, we then release the remaining amount through August 31st. Next slide, please. So this is a typical operations at Deadwood. Usually we let Deadwood fill. You can see in this scenario in 2020, we had some minor flood operations early on in the season. And then right there, we start to begin flow augmentation and irrigation demand. And it slowly steps up throughout the system until we hit August 31st. And then we completely cut off the water. Next slide, please. On this slide, I just wanted to lay out, this is an accounting that we get from the Department of Water Resources. This is closely watched with the Water District 65. They are in charge of the water and providing it to the irrigators and the people that own that portion. And so I just wanted to kind of lay this out and show you that every bit of water that we release from Cascade is accounted for, aside from flow or flood operations. So once flood operation ends, every drop of water that we release out of Cascade and Deadwood is accounted for and is provided to the irrigators and to meet our flow augmentation releases. Next slide, please. So these slides, I just wanted to kind of walk through a couple of dry and big snow years, so wet years. And this is the classic 2017. You can see the red dash line. That's what our flood split, our required space is. So as the year went on, we all know it was a big water year, so we had to increase flows early on to create what we call a hole in the reservoir, and then fill up the reservoir with the remaining runoff that occurs. Next slide, please. And then on a dry year, 2015, I could have put up 2021 because that's exactly where we were at. We hold the minimum flow down there as long as possible, and then we start, once the reservoir gets as full as it's going to get, or irrigation or flow augmentation water is required, we start releasing water. Next slide. This slide, I was just, excuse me, pointing out the different types of years that we have. So in 2015, we filled up it was dry, and then it was super dry, no precip, and you can see that we just had no spring runoff, and that's exactly kind of what happened in 2021. This year, we just are not seeing any, we didn't see any spring precip to keep those flows up, the inflows into the reservoir. And so you can see that I want to point out the carryover. So once in 2005 on a dry year, it starts to draft quickly, and so compared to say 2017, which is the green line, we had big water. It ran for a long time. We had a good inflow, and between the 2017 and the dry year, it's about a 6.23 foot difference in carryover. So that's at the end of the season. There's that much more water in the system. So a lot of where the reservoir ends up depends on what kind of year we have and what kind of spring and how long that continues on. Next slide, please. So currently we are running 1,850 CFS out of the reservoir. This is to meet irrigation demand and to meet salmon flow augmentation. We'll continue that flow approximately in that area between 18 to 1,600 throughout the season until August 31st. And then once August 31st occurs, we give control of the river over to Water District 65, and they release water to meet the remaining irrigation demand, whatever they may have. Next slide. So this is Deadwood. Deadwood, we are currently leasing. Just yesterday, we increased the flow to 750 CFS. This was to meet flow augmentation and to meet irrigation demand. We'll continue that flow until about July 15th, and then likely increase it, but we'll have to shut off the system quite a bit sooner due to the low water year we had. So we're looking around August 15th-ish to reduce those flows down. So the flows on the South Fork will be quite a bit lower this year because of the drought. Next slide. That's all for me. Hopefully I laid out kind of how we operate. It's a tricky system, but if you have any questions, feel free to call me anytime. Brian, back to you.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Yes, it is a tricky endeavor, and I appreciate you doing your best to lay it out for us. Ryan, a couple questions on operations that you might see if you can answer. The first one is, as drought worsens and temperatures warm with climate change, how do you think this will impact future dam releases and reservoir water quality? So maybe why don't you focus on the first one in terms of how climate change might affect operations?
Oh, I guess I could see things changing. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't know what direction we would take. We're required to meet our salmon flow and our irrigators' demands. So do I see an earlier start date of that water? Possibly, but that's a pretty difficult question to answer offhand. I don't know where we would go. We will just continue down our path of meeting our requirements and then reacting to that situation.
Yeah, I have heard, and I think it's Basin specific, of course, but there's information out there that suggests that with climate change, we'll see earlier runoff, less snowpack, and so, you know, Ryan, as you suggested, working those really yearly dynamics into operations is kind of a real-time thing. So to the person that asked that question, there's not one good answer. It depends on the kind of year you get as we progress through the dynamics of climate change. And then the second aspect of that question, Rich, maybe if you could address how climate change might affect water quality in Cascade Reservoir. Is there any way you could take a run at that one?
You bet, Brian. Well, the quick and easy answer is, being that we've been recently funded and we're going to be able to look at modeling operational changes to be able to hopefully improve water quality, or see if there's anything that we can do operationally to improve water quality. We'll be looking at that here in the near future. But as for water quality on climate change, due to climate change, it's bound to get worse. We're going to have more increased water temperatures, which tends to increase biological activity, which again leads to more algal breaks. And everyone, please be aware that the toxic algal blooms are not just a Lake Cascade Reservoir issue. It's on many reservoirs in the West. So this is a continual issue that I think everyone is going to have to review and figure out a solution. Thank you, Brian.
Welcome, Rich. Ryan, one more question on the operations presentation. Is the North Fork of the Payette River kayak competition always scheduled with Reclamation to align with flow augmentation flows?
So the competition isn't scheduled with us. I did get a call from the organizer this year, and he actually got pretty lucky on us having to provide flow augmentation water. We don't move water for competitions or rafting. It was just a good timing on their part that we were required to meet flow augmentation water. So in the future, they probably should get together with us or discuss with us where we may possibly go throughout the year, but we don't, they just got lucky this year.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. One more thing, if I could go back to the climate change comment. Failed to mention that we have a water modeling group in our regional office that is broadly engaged in climate change analysis to inform future operations. And so that wouldn't necessarily be specific to Cascade Reservoir. Although, having said that, I mentioned that study that we just received funding on. We're still scoping that up, but my sense is that part of that might also include a climate change component. So we may, and I use that term a little loosely because we're still, again, framing it up, have some more specific information on Cascade Reservoir in the future. So stay tuned on that. Also wanted to acknowledge the question that was received going back to Brian Brown. That says, please explain private ownership versus grazing easements for sections of shoreline around Cascade Reservoir where grazing is visible. Please clarify what can change, what cannot change with regard to shoreline grazing. So that's a pretty complicated question. A lot packed into that, and I think what I'd like to do is ask that person to reach out to Brian directly. As he alluded to, we've got a mix of private ground, reclamation ground, ag easements, and so it's not as cut and dried as saying, if you see a cow in the water, that cow needs to get out. That's not the way it works up there. So we will, or I would suggest that you reach directly up to Brian on that one, and he can walk you through that intricacy. Let's see, we have one more question, and get this queued up here. Ryan Hedrick, this question is, can you address how the recent Valley County drought declaration signed by the governor last week will change operations this year in layman terms? So I guess maybe that question is will our operations change this year as a result of the recent drought declaration?
I have not seen anything on that. I do not know. Basically, the water we are releasing is required by us. So unless the biological opinion things change on that, we will still meet our flow augmentation water, and then the water that is released above and above that flow augmentation water is all the water district 65 water. So it's all the irrigators that have stake in that water. So I don't know, unless the irrigation districts are required or will lessen the amount of water they need, I don't see a change.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, well, really appreciate the questions and comments we received thus far. Keep them coming. We have one more speaker we'd like to get to. Our fifth and final speaker for the session today is Dave McCarville. Dave is the Emergency Management Specialist for the Snake River Area Office, and he will discuss emergency management strategies in the basin. I'll turn it over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Brian. Just to lead in here, I hope overall that we walk away from this not being overly scared about once we start talking about emergencies. I hope to portray to everybody that, you know, this is an area that we take very seriously, but we also preemptively do a lot of work within the Bureau of Reclamation to maintain our facilities integrity in general. So here's, I am the Emergency Management Specialist for the Snake River Area Office. Next slide, please. So here you've got the emergency action planning. This is what's called an EAP sitting there, and as this EAP is primarily for notification procedures regarding possible hazards at a facility. I'm going to give you kind of a brief chronological overview of these. Next slide, please. So the background of emergency action planning and the entire dam safety program began in 1978 after the Teton Dam failure of '76. This ensures ongoing preparation for future hazard mitigation. As I was saying, this is something we take very seriously. We continue to work towards overall maintenance of not only our facilities, but also our planning. All emergency action plans they're reviewed and maintained annually, internal as well as just ensuring that the notification drills and everything that goes along with the proper phone numbers and emails and contact information, that's all reviewed. And then as well, those are exercised every 4 years. One or the other exercise, we'll either have like a tabletop exercise that brings all the most valuable players, downstream stakeholders, shareholders, emergency managers, brings everybody to the room virtually this year, but it's an open forum so we can discuss through the procedures that we would utilize, and then the other 4 years later we facilitate a functional exercise. Either of these exercises, big part of my job is bringing situations that could possibly occur, and then how we would react to those within our expected actions, as well as what forms of communication would work best in those scenarios. And these EAPs, or emergency action plans, they are distributed within the USBR and then on down to downstream agencies for everybody to be on the same page. Next slide, please. The operations and maintenance, I had mentioned that before. So in chronological order, we spend a lot of time triple checking our facilities to make sure they're functioning properly. There's annually or on an 8-year basis, you've got a dam operator training that way everybody that is working at the facilities is up to speed with the standard operating procedures. And that does occur annually. Sorry, I was jumping ahead in my brain to some of the other things that happen every 8 years. But those occur annually. That way everybody's current with the most up-to-date standard operating procedures. Also, so they understand if they get outside of those parameters, all right, we need to grab that EAP. Our facilities are, some of the larger facilities are staffed 24/7. Some of the smaller, all the EAP or all the facilities within the Payette EAP are staffed 24/7. Some of our other smaller irrigation facilities, they're at least checked quite often. We also conduct ongoing visual inspections, and this schedule changes depending on the conditions. For example, if we are still filling our reservoir above certain facilities, those ongoing visual inspections may occur, once a month, but we also have within our standard operator procedures plans for as we get fuller and fuller to full pool, those happen more and more often. And we even have, plans for if we get to, full pool, we're doing that daily. And then as well, some of the operations and maintenance, dam safety folks conduct what's called a comprehensive review. This occurs every 8 years, and it's a huge team of engineers that come together and then just fine-tooth comb all the way through each facility. They're looking for specific points where we need to update some areas for maintenance. Between gates, they're checking the concrete, everything like that. And these CRs, the comprehensive reviews, they can actually say, hey, we need to, work on certain aspects based on what we think, the potential failure modes are, and we do what we can to fix those. Now, 8 years might seem like a long time because it kind of is. A lot of things can change. So staggering with that, every 4 years, we also have a technical response team that goes in and goes through much the same way and taking a look at all those same areas. And if we find issues that we anticipate could be problems or cause a hazard later on, we go ahead and work towards fixing those issues before we even come back around to the comprehensive reviews. We take these recommendations very seriously, depending on the levels that we assess to them. Next slide, please. So emergencies, once again, I want to reiterate this, they are highly unlikely. And we got a lot of very intelligent people that work really diligently to ensure that we are able to anticipate any problems that could happen in the future. With taking that seriously, though, you hope for the best, plan for the worst. So the dam safety program is Bureau of Reclamation wide. Many people are involved in this at many different levels. We're consistently reviewing and updating our plans, and we're working with our partners daily. Our emergency action plan for the Payette, for example, it includes Deadwood, Cascade, and Black Canyon. And so, within that, I'm talking with emergency managers and in different areas, quite often, just to make sure that we have those partnerships, open lines of communication, in really solidified. So it's not the first time that we're talking on the phone if there were ever to be a hazard at a facility. Next slide. So the emergency action plans. These are site-specific information regarding hazards related to each facility. Each facility has been built in somewhat different ways. They have different outlet works, and so these, and they're different thicknesses of concrete or earthen dams are built in certain ways. So each action plan is specific to that facility to key people into certain areas that they need to be more concerned about than others. We group them together when facilities are interconnected. So as we say, like within the Payette, you've got 3 different facilities that if one's releasing water, it's affecting the other and it's affecting the other. And so we want to group those into one plan. And so it makes it a lot easier in the event of emergency. So we can coordinate between those facilities. Within those, we do have, we identify a declaration of emergency levels. Within the Bureau, you know, we may have a response level or emergency level 1, 2, or 3, but for our downstream stakeholders and shareholders, most people may not know what an EL 1 or 2 is. So we're, you know, incorporating in, you know, the nomenclature of non-failure, potential failure, imminent failure. For an example, if we have a high flow year, like Ryan was talking about previously with like 2017, we had a lot of water. Facilities are fine, but it could be something where we're having to release a bunch of water. So, you know, you could potentially hear, hey, it's a non-failure issue, but hey, there's a lot of water. You know, folks maybe having a kayak competition, like you need to recognize there's a lot of water moving down. So just to kind of give you perspective of different situations as well. You know, it could just be high flows. It could be, you know, we have a big earthquake and we have to go in and start really looking in depth to double and triple check. Quite honestly, though, we made it through another one or another earthquake previously, and everything's checking out fine. So I mean, we have a lot of confidence, knock on wood, that once again, we won't deal with major issues. These EAPs, though, ultimately they outline the response, communications for the notifications, and the corrective actions to be taken. Next slide. So, for example, in the event of emergency declaration, what the USBR is going to do specifically for the Payette, we would make the notifications to a few folks. For example, we would be talking with Boise County Emergency, Gem County, Horseshoe Bend Hydraulics, or hydrologists. We'd be talking to the National Weather Service, and the list goes on. But for folks downstream, what you'd probably hear the information from isn't from us directly. These communications would go to those emergency management groups, and then they would be making the notifications of, hey, this is what you might need to prepare for. Within the Bureau, we're going to continue our ongoing communication within Reclamation. We're going to be making a culmination of resources needed to respond for hazard mitigation and continue efforts to stop the emergency. Next slide. If the emergency continues, you know, Reclamation is going to continue to take all necessary actions to control our situation at the facilities, and we also continue to update adjoining emergency agencies. Past that, as I was saying, local emergency management will facilitate all communications. They're going to decide whether we need to start discussing evacuation or flood warnings, what have you. It could even just be, you know, community town hall meetings where it's saying, hey, this is what we've got. Once again, talked about that high flow. And with my help, we would facilitate some town meetings where we can say, hey, this is what we got. The facility's fine. It's just we got a lot of water. So be careful when we're going out there and recreating. Next slide, please. So as we move forward in that progression, you know, it's at some point, you know, we've mitigated the hazard. Reclamation will still continue to make those notifications to all our downstream partners, and updates with the current situation and notification when the emergency declaration is terminated. So with that, I'm more than open to answer any and all questions the best that I can.
Okay, let's see here. Don't see anything on emergency management yet, Dave. Let's just give a couple moments here. Looks like we had one additional question come in for Ryan. It says, do county drought declarations affect USBR operations? So that's a little bit similar to the question we already had. And so maybe Ryan, if you could reiterate your response there.
Yeah, basically it's, we'll still end up providing the salmon flow water that we're required to release down the system. And then from there, it's about whatever the irrigators take. And Water District 65 would be the one to contact or ask if there's going to be any change in irrigation demand from there.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, I don't see any additional questions. So if anything comes to mind, go ahead and put it in the chat within the next 30 seconds. We're getting ready to wrap up here. Would like to say thank you to everyone for your participation and calling into this live event. Really appreciate the insightful questions that you asked, and want to again thank the reclamation speakers for sharing your expertise. Again, just a quick reminder that a transcript of the questions and answers will be prepared. So feel free to reach out to me or Christine, or really any of the speakers for that matter. If you'd like a copy of the transcripts, we can also share the slide deck if you'd like to see that. And as I mentioned earlier, we are recording this event, and so a recording of the live event will be made available on our website and perhaps some other venues as we move forward. So again, thanks everybody. Really appreciate your time this morning. Have a great remainder of the day and week. Try to stay cool, and goodbye.